Hello.
Hi, Hriday, we can hear you. Can start.
Yeah, thank you so much, Almir. Thanks to the Western Caspian University authorities and the colleagues who are joining in here. Almir, you'll have to do me a favor for now. I have put on my mobile and the laptop is right behind me. So I'll try to access the PPT from my laptop. But then for now, can you put the PPT from your side? I'll ask you to change slide whenever so that okay, great. Thank you so much. And colleagues, this is let me just briefly introduce myself before I go ahead. Elmi, could you go back to the previous slide? Yeah, thanks. So this is Hriday Sarmanın here. I am a native from India, and it's once again pleasing to connect with my colleagues from Azerbaijan because I had stayed and worked there as a fellow and consultant with the CAREC Institute. Vusal Gasemli, he is heading the CAREC, as some of you may know. It was a recently started center, and when I had come in, my topic there was basically somehow bringing to light Azerbaijan's influence and participation in the INSTC project. In the INSTC project, INSTC in International North-South Corridor project. So back 2-3 years back, the government was quite heavily focusing on INSTC, as some of you again may know, and but then the recent change has been towards BRI, and so also I had partly participated in the digital hub project. So one of my colleague, he was maintaining the digital hub, and my basic background is sustainability, wider sustainability. I see there's two different. Let me be here for a while. Let me be on the phone, and then I'll see how I can change. But it's okay, fine. And so this is my brief background. Otherwise, I had worked in Israel. I had I was working there as a fellow for a year, and I had delivered some lectures while I was in Azerbaijan at the UNAC University, and coming back to the topic. So what drives me to speak today on sustainable development is basically I see somehow the country I come from and Azerbaijan, being middle income countries, we have something to share and also learn from each other. So, I would once request the participants, maybe any of you willing to share something about yourself, please feel free before I go ahead. Anybody willing to say something? I'll be most happy to hear from you. And forgive me for the poor quality of the. So this is again on the mobile.
Mr. Sharma, Professor, I greet you from Western Caspian University, and we are very appreciative of having your speech today, and I hope that we will enjoy a lot from your speech and from your presentation. And wishing you all the best, and you and the other attendees, and I hope that we will learn a lot from your slides and your topics. Thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you, Professor. Thanks a lot. Again, it's a privilege connecting, as I said. Thanks for the opportunity. Also, one important point which I had missed out, I had a non-profit, non-partition, within quotes, I say this, center. It's registered here in New Delhi. We call it Caucasus Asia Center. We have been doing some very interesting activities since we started. That was back in 2017, late 17, I think. And we did a program last year in Brussels where embassy officials from all three South Caucasus countries. I shall go like it. Some of you may have some difficulty hearing me or understanding me. So again, apologies. So other than that, we have also been doing, I mean, it's very interesting balancing conflicting countries, including India, Pakistan, or so we try to take a very apolitical position on all matters, all political related matters. So we did event last year at the Higher School of Economics, Moscow. And as I said, like sustainability, I would be speaking more on that. It's not simply like this is the crux. I don't want to say this at the very beginning, but I must say, like sustainability is not just climate change. It is much more than that. And today, let's explore how sustainable development, as it is being said by the UN and some other prominent organizations. So let's see how sustainable development is connected with us and how we shall connect with sustainable. I mean, we are already connected in the present time, in the present very changing times. Elmir, could you change the slide of the presentation? Of course, as you have seen the topic. So I said very interesting times. Of course, the hottest topic or the hot topic today is COVID-19. Countries, including India, have been affected. Some of them have been affected to an extent more or some little less. But all countries worldwide have been affected, as you may know, like a very neighboring country to Azerbaijan, Georgia, is said to have managed the crisis very well. But it's just the initial management. Like we had a recent interview of a senior professor from the country, Professor Gian Odia, who was once the economic minister. So he said like this again, like I also agree to what he says. So this is the very initial stage. Now, if we open up the entire settings, like to tourists, we do not know how well it will be managed ahead. So the same thing goes in India. Like we had a severe lockdown. Things were relatively good until a month back. Things have started to open up, and now we are already in the top 10 countries most affected. So this, of course, is a very interesting point in time. And how is it affecting all of us? Like it's not just affecting us, it's affecting the businesses, which is what drives us to have our bread and butter. So as the Director General has said, like the WHO has been accessing the I mean, you can read it, of course, like I'll not go into the whole statement. So what he said, like we are in a very interesting point, and COVID-19 needs to be managed well and with sincerity by all countries. Next slide. Can you have the next slide? Okay. It is again very interesting. This is what I was doing some research and I could find. Like the crisis was decided on 12. I mean, it was decided on 20. On a day on March, and the day this press brief was being given out, there's no fine mention on the website. Like it only says when had declared the COVID-19 as a PHEIC, the public health emergency of international concern, which was basically on 30th January. So somehow they have skipped the day they made public that COVID-19 is a pandemic. So the video, of course, is there in World Bank, WHO YouTube videos, but it somehow is missing at this moment in their website, like at least the newsroom website. Next slide. So you see the number of deaths and etc. So number of infected, the number is really, really huge. So how can it not have been the biggest event like in our days? The number, like I see the number of fatalities. One second. Please bear with the background noise. There's some. So I see the cases per day has somehow been more or less stagnating in the last month or so. And the daily deaths have come down, definitely, not like the previous month. And this only implies that we have, I mean, the humanity like at large has somehow been able to, if not manage, get some control over this pandemic. And so let's see, it's again very early to say anything on this. Next slide. So, I mean, some of you again would be reading like news stories in your newspapers or all over the internet. So there are a couple of, I mean, many conspiracy theories like attached to this whole episode, including like, which I should not say, Mr. Trump had said on a very, that's a I mean, I personally feel that's a derogatory statement, like where he says like China virus. It's not China virus. Like somehow the virus may, I mean, it still may have been detected in Wuhan city. I mean, credible sources point towards that. However, it is not the people from China who had been the carriers of this virus. It is people, the large number of Americans who were staying in China, at least, I mean, the younger peoples who were teaching English there. And so while they had come back, and the people from Europe who had visited America, so somehow they carried the virus in their bodies. As of now, it's being said human bodies are the only carriers. So again, some credible articles and claims have been made, including in the Nature journal, and this clearly points this is not a man-made catastrophe. I mean, they say the authors claim with facts it is not a man-made catastrophe and it has somehow been naturally evolved. So again, there could be some new researches coming up, which is already going on in all countries. So let's see how this, I mean, one point has to be agreed by all of us, like we have been intruding into the atmosphere, like since the industrial age, and that too at a massive level. So you need to understand there has been human intrusion at a great level. So now we cannot deny the fact that we have been disturbing the balances. So this could be one reason, which is also being said by some, at least a school of scholars. But this is too early to predict. Why has the entire world economy come to a standstill of this virus? Next slide. Amid the, I mean, coronavirus is of course the hot topic of the day, but amid that there are other things going on. Of course, one particular point like which directly affects Azerbaijan is oil price. So like I have some energy analysts as colleagues. So like you have a sudden fall of the WTI, the Western Texas Intermediate, and the Western media again, the BBC, CNN, others, they ran across number of stories. Like I was that night, I was like eyewitnessing the fall. I mean, of course, over internet, and I was talking to some American colleague, like, can we buy some bonds, like at this moment, because oil is, of course, it's going to rise. Somehow the arrangement, because it was a futures contract and not like spot market contract. So futures market was going to end the next day, and they kind of, the fall happened just before the May crash. I mean, it was the May contract, I guess, that was about to end. So that night, the crash happened, and the media was gaga over the whole story. Interestingly, at that very moment, you need to understand the Brent crude, the Brent crude, which is the more international standard, like countries trade between them. So that stayed around $26. The WTI, on the one hand, it was minus 37.40, and the other was more or less stable. So the downfall did not hit the global economy as the media was howling at that moment. And so another interesting point was like they wanted to squeeze out some Chinese investors who had brought bonds, like that was again being issued by the Bank of China in China. So there were retail investors from China. Again, you need to mind, China is a rich country today. It's not simply a developing country like India. So they had put in some good money, big money, in fact, cumulatively. And they tried to, that was again a shock for the Chinese investors. And somehow that they had to be removed. And that's whole how that is how the story ended somehow. Also the big reason was the storage capacity. So oil for a short period, it hit the lowest like in recent history. Next slide. Friends, colleagues, I again apologize. I am using my Android mobile and the laptop is right behind. So it's somehow Teams. I am new to Teams, so I'm finding it little difficult over here. But I hope you are able to understand. And also I request you, there's some flagging option out here. So if you can flag any questions even while I'm speaking, so I should be happy to answer any of your questions. So as I had again, so the very next month, WTI crude had spiked 88% in May, which is remarkable. Like from minus 40 to 88%. It has somehow come back like to where it should have been. And I already said Brent had been performing well even then. And today the Brent it stands at $41. So which is not bad. Next slide. At the very beginning of the year, Azerbaijan government was expecting a barrel of oil exports would be somewhat around $60. And they also had witnessed and to an extent suffered the low prices of oil. And so the oil petrodollars, which was coming some 10 years back, it's not enjoying the same. Maybe some of you are feeling the pinch, and maybe some of the senior professors would know better. Once in Azerbaijan, things were really good. But now, as the country tries to go in for other avenues of income, and including a non-oil sector. So, interesting forces are coming into play. So the average price of oil exported by Azerbaijan from January 1 to March 1, 2000 was 60 per barrel. Why mention the price fluctuation? Because it directly affects Azerbaijan's economy and sustainability component to it. Next slide. Likewise to oil. There are also other, good and bad forces running all across. And so conflicts are going on even today. The first thing that strikes in this slide is, of course, the picture. So there was a car bombing in Syria that happened in April. So this is what the BBC photo is. And likewise, many people died in that bombing. So likewise in Syria, in Yemen, things are really bad. And only some agencies have done some investigation how the people who have been displaced from their houses and putting up in temporary camps, what would happen if corona hits such crowded places. I mean, that would be a disaster, God forbid. And today, it's again like we were living in a very globalized world, but apparently all countries have gone inside boxes with this COVID-19, and like as I said, like countries have gone. Some illegal forces have continued to operate. Like you cannot say illegal; it is sometimes out of helplessness as well. So the number of people moving out from the Middle East, especially the most conflict countries, into Europe, has not gone down. It's somehow in the first 3 months it has increased as compared to the last year. So as the IOM reports, like in the first 4 months, it was 16,724, which was of course more than like it was some hundreds more than in 2019. Next slide. This is the part two. Like I was trying to give you a broader picture of the ground realities, like what's happening today, the emerging realities, and how can we see sustainable development or sustainability getting connected to the ground realities. So sustainability, as the Brundtland Commission has stated its definition, it basically says like we need to consume today as much as possible so that our next generations, all our future generations are secure. Like we do not finish up the natural resources, and so resources and also other components like material. It could be, I'll read out the sentence, the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The concept of needs go beyond simply material needs and includes values, relationships, freedom to think, act, participate, all amounting to sustainable living, morality, and spirituality. So, I mean, the premises have, of course, been environmental protection, economic growth, and social equity of sustainable development. Next slide. The UN has taken the lead role. Yes, the UN has definitely taken the lead role, and most of you would agree. And there are other actors like the civil society and private companies that have also been partners. But somehow, with regard to climate change, UN has been a very leading force, informing countries, trying to bring in countries within their fold of restraining carbon emissions. So the International Conference for Renewable Energies was held in 2004, which led to the formation. I mean, the first one of the conclusions of that major conference was creation of IRENA. Today, IRENA is an intergovernmental organization that is mandated to facilitate cooperation, advance knowledge, promote and adopt sustainability measures with regards to renewable energy. Next slide. Again, like before we go ahead, like I would interrupt myself here a bit. So I'm trying to connect the ground realities today with sustainable development. What has been, what the conceptualization which happened in an era where things were relatively normal, unlike today. So you need to understand sometimes the old definitions, which were very correctly defined, may not very squarely justify the present imperatives. So many of you may have questions. I'm again asking you. So if you have, please, let's make it a two-way interaction than simply me going through the entire slides. So the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement was the first ever universal legally binding global climate change agreement. And all countries in the world basically had attended that conference, including people representing small and big civil society organizations and the private companies. So a long-term goal which was defined was keeping the global temperature rise to 2 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels, and trying to limit it to 1.5 degrees. They also had come up with some other conclusions, takeaway conclusions, including putting in resources by all countries voluntarily. I mean, so that the future remains secure and secure for our future generations. And all countries had been, I mean, almost all countries have ratified the Paris Agreement today. Major non-signatory or who has not ratified. When you sign a convention, like some of you may know it well, few of you may not. Like you may simply state may sign an international convention, but then it again needs to ratify it like within its national jurisdiction, so that it legally and officially commits to it. So Turkey has not ratified it, and US has initiated a process of withdrawing from the Paris Agreement. So this was under Trump, I believe last year. So next slide. So these were the 17 sustainable development goals that were agreed in the conference. I mean, you can go through the slides. Many of this is a very common image that you see all across the internet. And so these are basically the ones. And next slide again. So it kind of says removing poverty, addressing hunger issues, so etc. etc. And so, as I had said, not just the government, other actors have also been very much involved. Not just government and intergovernmental organizations, but also private companies, corporates, and local communities have been at the forefront of driving up latest wave of sustainable development. You have a number of such alliances coming up. The alliances, some of them have been successful to an extent, some of them are still doing so. And basically, forces have joined hands to work on climate issues, climate and fossil-related issues. So, we again need to understand, somehow the whole discourse and actions have surrounded climate and fossil fuels. The pressing point is you need to phase out fossil fuels and you need to scale up renewables. But questions may come up has the phasing out of fossil fuels enhanced sustainability in any ways? Maybe to an extent, yes, but that cannot be the only solution and should not be the only solution, because sustainability is not about harming oneself, which includes maybe individual societies or even countries. So countries smaller countries including Azerbaijan, which is a fossil exporting country, cannot, and I feel it should not, hurt its economy just to focus on certain figurative or paper goals. So it needs to fine tune its goals in a way that it also substantiates its economy, and at the same time it pursues climate goals. So as I had said, some alliances had been formed. One of them is a Business Alliance for Water and Climate. It has 51 partners, 3 majors from India, 3 major companies. Not 3 major companies, 3 companies. Tata is a global company. Tata is a major company. And perhaps it's one of the biggest in the world. You may not know, almost all of you may have heard of Tata, but you may not know Tata has multiple entities under its belt, including some major companies in the UK, Singapore, etc. So Jan Irrigation is India's one of the leading drip irrigation service providers, and I found this company quite interesting because it's kind of a medium company, Banca Biolo. So they are a woman-centric organization, and they come up with products and services with related to hygiene, like including cleaning up of houses, etc. So, I mean, like they have been a member to this global alliance. So that's quite an ambitious endeavor on part of the organization company. There are other major alliances like Alliance for Climate Action, etc. Please change the slide. Okay, I need to, Elmir, can you just go back to the last slide once? Yeah, Alliance for Climate Action is a major alliance. Like it has like a number of companies and organizations. It has bodies in many countries. I don't know if it has a body in Azerbaijan, but it definitely has one in India. So some of the even national bodies of CAN, it has offices, are very actively working on climate and sustainability matters. Next slide. The alliance list is quite long, so it's everybody is trying to, not everybody, but more ambitious and determined actors. They are trying to play a prominent role. So the Chilean government, as part of UN Climate Change Conference COP25 last year, so they had launched Climate Ambition Alliance. They had awarded a senior personality, and so they say like companies and states, businesses that are committing to 1.5 degree centigrade, like a climate temperature rise. So whoever are committing to this larger goal are part of the alliance. They have not put up stringent qualifications. So this is one interesting thing. Next slide. I'm going a little fast because I would also like to learn and interact with all of the participating participants here. So like I hope to get some inputs and questions. Sorry. So civil society organizations, like this was a very interesting organization, a national organization that was formed in Norway back in 2013 before a parliamentary election. So I believe 101 organizations, like all belonging to different sectors, they had come together and converged over like six political demands, and before the election, but then somehow they could not scale up the alliance because the commitment of the individual organizations were not great. Like they had put up some very general demands, like reduce Norwegian emissions in line with UN recommendations. The term climate justice must be given a special content. Like people must be an important part of the solution. Oh, that's a very interesting, recommendation. Like alliances and organizations have tried to also put emphasis on people-centric solutions. However, like sometimes it has happened that this approach does not work optimally. Why? Because individuals like myself or some of us may not be that empowered to wage climate activism. But again, the point here is that it's sustainable development or pursuing sustainability very much, to a great extent, differs. This is a very big word. I say that it's not really, squarely related to, sustainable development and climate change. Maybe two sides of the same coin. However, sustainable development has a bigger meaning, and we need to understand that, and we need to work on other sectors as well. So this is a major point. We should all focus and see how we can contribute. And the Climate Alliance, 1,700 members spread across. So this is the CAN Alliance I'm saying, and it's in fact the CAN is the world's largest city network dedicated to climate action, and the only one to set tangible targets I was just saying about the CAN alliance. So they are the most prominent. I mean, among the most prominent ones, and other alliances also exist, like ACT Alliance, Global Alliance of more than 145 churches and related organizations in 120 countries. The well-known NGO Oxfam Pacific 350.org, another kind of an alliance. But again, what I would like to point here, basically, so you are seeing a reinvention of the wheel, like organizations, as I said, the more ambitious or maybe the more determined ones, they are trying to initiate global alliances of like-minded partners, or like are willing to spread their own influence at the world level. So it should not be just reinventing the wheel. I mean, there has to be coordination even among these global alliances that are working towards achieving climate goals and related goals. Next slide. So, like the results of climate action, the result, of course, has been tangible. I mean, renewable energy has, the share of renewable energy has definitely grown over the last 10-15 years. I mean, hydro, the larger hydro power projects, like including some in countries like Brazil. So there have been questions of like carbon footprints while building the dams. But even if we exclude the large dams, the share of renewable energy today is at around 17%. So which is not bad. Like some 2004, if I'm not mistaken, it was only around 4% of the global energy. So we see the renewables have started to increase. But a point I would like to mention today, like you might be reading stories. I have an energy background, so I can say, like my PhD thesis was on energy transition from fossils to renewables. So when you take up such a, I mean, it's a common topic, and I did some case studies. So, like, what I conclude personally, like my research concludes, is basically fossil fuels are going to stay. Fossil fuels are going to stay for a long period unless breakthrough technologies come up, unless any breakthrough solutions come up. And fossil fuels have been kind of put into a lock-in system. And the lock-in system is as such that you cannot phase out fossils immediately, like the aeroplanes, especially the aeroplanes or the automobile sector, you might be having solar energy. Like suddenly to replace the machineries of the aeroplanes could be a little difficult. So the lock-in, I mean, renewables as a challenger has grown, but there is time till it becomes a prominent challenger. Today and for tomorrow, like at least when things have come to a standstill today, it only delays the transition period. Like innovations, like whatever small companies they were pursuing until Corona started, I mean, they will be delayed. So this is the other, I mean, opinion. Some scholars are claiming, like due to the coronavirus, like now renewable energy will be getting scaled up. So I would like to differ on this point. Like I see like somehow the influence of fossils, which are now getting super cheap, will remain as the more predominant fuel of all countries. Next slide. Next, yeah. So the third part, basically, I say a big question. I had started with this. So, should sustainable development be only be restrained to addressing rather phasing out fossil fuels and limiting global rise of temperatures? The answer is, of course, no, not. And sustainable development has to be embedded in our lives, meaning in all sectors and economy, both national and global. So this is what I've been trying to focus and say. So we need to understand, like sustainable development, any entity, individual, company, or even larger organization which could be a state actor. So they need to pursue sustainability in a way that does not hamper itself. Next slide. Sustainable development in context of business. So one prominent aspect with regards to sustainable development is definitely business economics. So economics today, the whole sector of economy was the backbone for a globalized world. So it was basically flow of goods and services which derived a globalized world. As today we are experiencing and living in today, as in before Corona started. So I hope the whole Corona phase is not a long phase, and we overcome this. All countries overcome this, and business as usual starts to run. Please not change the slide. I need to. So why sustainable business? Business sustainability, also known as corporate sustainability, is the management and coordination of environment, social, and financial demands and concerns to ensure responsible, ethical, and ongoing success. And so, why do businesses actually need to incorporate sustainability into their operations? To improve processes, like incorporating sustainable technologies and techniques does not defeat operations, it rather increases operations. In fact, to be honest, I was having a drone, I am associated with a company, so they give out drone trainings. So we were saying to a government body, why incorporation of new technologies could be helpful and make processes easier. So I'm saying the same thing here. If you automatize processes, and when you automatize processes, it brings in sustainability. So it improves sustainable development. It improves output and pursue growth. The second point, pursue growth not just of the output, but basically of your own processes as well. You are pursuing, any company, when it incorporates sustainable development goals and techniques towards achieving that goals. I hope I'm not complicating you. All of you. So the growth happens even within the company in different sectors, whether it be in their daily operations or be their output, whatever output they are producing. So it is there have been numerous lectures by senior academics and market experts where they have really, on factual grounds, they have concluded when you incorporate more sustainable measures, the output actually increases. And finally, adding value to their companies, value in terms of reputation, business attractiveness, and capacity. So, IKEA, a company, IKEA, who, many of you may know, so they are into furniture businesses. So IKEA, to my knowledge, they have been incorporating sustainable techniques throughout their value chain. And the output has definitely been greater people's acceptance, and also maintaining their global brand. Next slide. Changing time calls for changing actions at the level of the end consumers, that is individuals dedicatedly pursuing and contributing towards SDGs. How? So what I mean here is basically, under changing situation, it is not just companies, it is also us, the end consumers and the individuals, who need to work towards achieving sustainable development goals and sustainability. Only if we advocate in our daily activities and things we do, we can not just advocate, we can pressurize the bigger organizations to adhere to sustainable development goals. The UN mentions, in the particular link I have said, so it mentions some measures how we could also, people could also work towards achieving the SDGs. So it's they give out a long list. So it's by increasing livelihoods, emergency food assistance, especially so at this hour. So even we have been, like at my family, we have been giving out some small assistance to poor families here in India. And so coming down, like I say, engage with local hunger and relief organizations, schools, libraries. So, I mean, sustainability has not ended like once Corona has struck in. So, I mean, even today, there is enough scope for us to pursue SDGs. And in fact, like with the reduction of smoke, etc., I see this is a good time we get more intimately involved with the SDGs and try to perform, like whether be at our work front, like personally demonstrating like how we could do certain innovations, like pursue certain innovations, which also contributes toward climate change matters, and etc. Next slide. Unseen actors in the value chain. So this is an interesting thing, which it's not very openly mentioned over the internet sources. Like what I mean here, the unseen actors are the actors located in the middle of the value chains or the supply chains. So when you see the actors located midway of the supply chains, so it could be individuals, companies, and countries. I see Azerbaijan because of its very strategic location. So it also is, it of course connects like Europe with Asia and Asia with Europe. So here is an opportunity for Azerbaijan to also display sustainable endeavors and come up as a leader, not just within its territories, but also at the regional and global level. And one important fact, like when you say sustainable development and sustainability, it is not always about pursuing higher advanced technologies. It could be sometimes going for the low-tech technologies as well. So we cannot and we should not go in a very unidirectional matter. The startup, the Israel startup, which goes like, which is kind of like hooked to the advances, may not be the very right solution for a world where you have rich and poor people. So in India, I feel, at least like talking about my own country, I feel there is scope for, again, you need to understand India may not be as what you are seeing in your TVs. Like Mumbai, I studied in Mumbai, I'm staying in New Delhi. So, I mean, they are developed places. They are definitely developed places, and despite of the developed, recent advances and development, I say even within parts of the city, we need to go for low tech advances. So this is one of the advances, like a wheel, like sometimes being run by. It's called the Persian wheel. So in some places, it's being run by the solar power, and in some, like you have a small motor. So build another important component of the unseen actors, like what they can do towards pursuing sustainable development, is building smart systems. I don't say here smart cities, I say smart systems. So smart systems could be at the level of cities. They could be at the level of like even an institution. So when you make things more smarter, which includes high tech and low tech, a combination of both. So the result could be sometimes better than only if you go a unidirectional way. So this also includes doing away with corruption, including in smaller places, increasing policy level measures to bring efficiency, to connect actors within the system and from outside. So as I said, like let's take the example of Azerbaijan at a larger level. So it's a country. And such measures would increase efficiency of operations for local actors and also help the local actors to get better connected with international partners. Next slide. And we have the technology. This is in fact the last slide. I believe. Elmir, am I correct? Elmir, am I correct? Elmir, are you on the phone? So anyways, I'll read out maybe so this is being said by Sir Robert Watson, former chair of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and co-author of the report that closely has examined 184 voluntary pledges under the agreement. Like 184 countries have voluntarily pledged. So what he says, we have the technology and knowledge to make those emission cuts, but what's missing are strong enough policies and regulations to make it happen. So this is where I basically end my presentation. What is needed is we need to have stronger policies, regulations, and most importantly, the determination to pursue the policies, regulations, and enact them. Last slide. Last slide. Thank you, and wish you all a sustainable and happy future. I did my presentation all on the mobile, so I hope I could still convey my message. And I'm most open to all questions. Let's make it a interactive session like the left out time we have weekly. Feel free to ask me general or partly technical questions if you have any. And may I just ask one thing? How many participants do we have at the moment?
Actually, we have over 20 participants now.
Great, thank you.
And I have to note that we are live on Facebook and Instagram. So more than right now, I hope that more people are watching and listening your fantastic, valuable presentation, and really was very educated and it was really interesting. But I have some questions about the COVID-19 outbreak, this pandemic. What's your point? What's your expectation about the sustainable development? Will it be any negative or positive contributions to world's sustainable development?
As I had mentioned, like initially, like it is too early to say. Like some scientists have claimed, like we have only witnessed the first wave of or the second wave, like in some countries, like a second wave of COVID-19. Like it is a different kind of a pandemic which has come up. Like it is not the same. Like in 2003, there was a pandemic in like there was some similar corona, like a virus which comes in the. I mean, it comes within the corona category. Like it had hit China in 2003.
It was SARS, if I'm not mistaken. It was the SARS virus, if I'm not mistaken.
Then again, it had hit like Saudi Arabia, if I'm not wrong. That was when, like it was maybe in 2007. Am I correct? So, anyways, so back in 2000s decade. So this has been a very different, unknown, like a disease which we have not been able to understand. And some scholars are saying that we need to manage with the virus, like in the coming time with the virus. Like there might be a situation where up until 2025. So it's not me who is saying so. So it's basically some renowned scholars, like they have claimed that there might be a situation where up till 2015, humanity may have to live with this virus. That would be a very long period, and maybe with incorporation of some measures. I'm saying some measures. I'm not saying sustainable measures, but of course they fall within the category of sustainability. So if we take some basic measures like maintaining social distance, hygiene, so this only enhances the whole sustainability domain, and it contributes towards sustainable development. I feel it has already contributed, because climate change. I mean, climate is getting better in my city. Maybe so back in Baku as well. And so I believe like it'll have a positive impact. Like at least we'll we have already got a good lesson, like of not being very serious of how do we engage with the environment. And so it will be a learning lesson how we manage and cope with the crisis, impacting positively to an extent.
Hope so. Hope that it will be have positive effects. And are there any questions from our attendees?
Yes, I want to ask question.
Please.
Hello, Mr. Sarma, and thank you for sharing your ideas. I am Nigar Bagirova. I am candidate for a PhD in Western Caspian University. And as you mentioned that sustainable development consider always the question of economic growth and social equity. And my question is, as we know that last year Esther Duflo and Amarjit Banerjee, they won the Nobel Prize on Economy for the ideas of reducing poverty in the world. Yes?
Okay.
And they proved that the one way of reducing poverty is making the education more acceptable. And especially in developing countries. Now, during this pandemic, we always, especially in developing countries, the people feel that they have a problem with education, with access to in education system. And in previous year, we always see that the gap between social equality becoming more and more deeply. For example, it showed the Gini coefficient shows it.
Okay.
And how do you think after pandemic, what will be the education system in developing countries? And the second question is how you assess the human factor in education.
What exactly you mean by the human factor?
A human factor in education.
Okay, let me start with your first question. Like that is a very interesting question. The disparity between the developed and the developing world in terms of education, like access to education and the quality of education. Yes. So one important point again, you need to understand, like I had said, sustainability is not only about climate change and rising temperatures. So it also finds value in the economy, in the business, and etc. So bigger and the more prominent education institutes like the Harvard, etc.
Yeah.
They have started some free courses. Like Harvard or the best of the universities, even your university, which is one of the premier universities in the country. So even while you are making some courses free, you cannot afford to make everything free because you need to also keep certain standards. Like this is not education in today's world. Internet has been a boon in that regard. Like there are students like coming from very small countries, like including maybe from India. I'm keeping India, vast parts of India are still developing. Mumbai is not purely developing. It is it is definitely a developed city. So like poor people from rural parts of India have accessed basic education and somehow they have made their way up to cities. So there could be like people accessing the basic education that is available over public domain, like the internet and other sources. But having quality education somehow still remains a privilege of the developed nations. So even today, I see like lot many young people from Azerbaijan. They want to go to the best European universities, and so there has not been the trend of going to South Korea or etc. But trust me, some developing countries. In fact, South Korea, by the way, is a fast developing country, and Thailand is a developing country. However, the quality of education out there has definitely increased. So the gap I see would remain, honestly and practically speaking. But developing countries and the people who comes within the more bigger developing category, they are also somehow catching up. I mean, especially with the incoming of the internet and technologies. And regarding the human factor, I'm not very precisely able to understand the human factor, what you mean. But again, the whole education and we are connected to the whole education sector. It's basically human acting as the carriers, drivers of the education. How do you make more accessible, high quality education? That remains a question.
Yes.
Maybe the alliances they could so either you will have to get in more people, offer more scholarships, or make education more cheaper. If you make cheaper, so there I saw a NAS daily video sometimes back. What he says, lot many education institutes are getting closed due to the coronavirus. So that is not a good sign. So the institutes, they as well need revenues. And the revenues would come when the economy moves. So things are connected. But one thing, what has been the positive thing is basically the developing countries are increasing their quality of lifestyle. It includes education.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Riga. Elmir, if anybody has written any questions, so I would be happy to take the written questions as well. And also, I need to thank Elmir for taking the lead to organize this. And the whole interview went on the Android phone.
No problem. If there will be any questions, I will forward it to you. But in this regard, I also have one more question. So maybe you can talk about how India is fighting against climate change. So you may share the experience of India with us.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. India is a large and huge country. We have many regulations coming up, policy regulations. But as I said, just the previous answer I was saying, education institution needs to have money coming in order to function and not get closed down. Similarly, India has been committing to climate change goals. It has been taking actions. However, its pursuit it's pursued and sometimes disregard for climate goals continues. I, being a more sustainable development advocate, I would say this as disregard. But maybe economists would say we need these actions in order for the country to sail smooth. So both ways, there are definitely a number of policies I can share maybe later. And we are having also I am a certified professional of a Indian government supported body which approves green buildings. So again, they have a very interesting and detailed qualification criteria. But the number of buildings or even smaller institutes and units they have sanctioned, it's more voluntary. Organizations need to connect with Griha and not Griha needs to connect with other organizations. So if some developer is trying to increase its value, I mean, of its real estate properties. So maybe he applies for Griha certification and not vice versa. So, I mean, we are still lagging way behind.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sarma. If there is no any question, we would like to express our gratitude and appreciation on behalf of Western Caspian University for your pointless speech and your remarks on about the sustainable development. So let me see if there is no any question. I would like to express our appreciation and again thanks to our attendants who really listened us till the end of our presentation. Thank you very much and have a nice day. Mr. Sarman, Professor, thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you all of the attendants. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.